Welcome back. Now, broadcaster and Classic Hits FM Niall Boylan has joined the panel. This, of course, has been the week in which Extinction Rebellion vowed to shut down the cities. Climate change protesters chained themselves to the gates of Leinster House tonight, keeping some of the TDs stuck inside. And earlier today, an activist grounded a plane. Niall Boylan, isn't this great to see people with such strong convictions about the most important thing facing the survival of the planet, taking strong action, inconveniencing the people who do nothing to stop it?
Me now.
Let's not even talk about the climate change debate just for the moment, but these individuals who are involved in these protests.
No, there's no climate change debate. That's done now. It's all about actually doing the things to deal with climate change.
We'll come to that in a minute, OK? But these individuals, I mean, Extinction Rebellion, I mean, they're the most alarming cult that I have ever come across in my life. I mean, these people have been around for the last 100 years, not the particular people that obviously are doing it. But if you watched them go through pennies last night, it was like a scene from The Walking Dead. You had a guy today on top of an aeroplane, another guy grounded an aeroplane. Yesterday you had a woman in the middle of Britain on a road who superglued her breasts to the ground. I mean, these people are strange. They're hippies. That's exactly what they are.
Hippies?
They're like something from the 1970s, flower power in America from the 1970s. They're not gaining any public support. And what they're actually doing is, for those people who want to get involved in climate change activism, what they're doing is turning them off. They're actually making a mockery of the whole thing. If you look at their policies from their founder member himself, right? The founder member himself talks about billions of people dying. And this, of course, what Greta talks about as well, mass extinction. Very soon, in this generation. That is complete and utter nonsense. And all it is scaremongering. These people are mad. And that's the only way you can just actually describe them is mad. If you look at some of the videos online, doing yoga, they're like something out of a drama class.
This is sneering at people who are well-intentioned. What videos?
People involved.
There's lots of very well-intentioned, very normal people. I've spoken to them as well.
Some of them obviously have very difficult mental health issues. That's all I can say.
Oh, that's an outrageous thing to say.
I don't care.
To turn around and say people who are very well-intentioned. I know you don't care how outrageous it is, because you never care how outrageous it is. But to turn around and to start saying the people who are on the streets of Dublin that have mental health, you have no basis whatsoever to say that.
Many of them have mental health problems, clearly, because anybody who's willing to superglue their breasts to the ground has a mental health problem.
You have no basis to say that.
We had a chief superintendent, an ex-chief superintendent in Britain who superglued or glued himself to a pavement. I mean, these people are mad.
Now, we had a member on this show, and the thing that I found surprising was how middle-class they all were, that they weren't crusties. Brid, what's your take on this?
I'm a member of Extinction Rebellion. I don't have mental health issues currently. I think most of us...
many of them.
I think most of us at some stage of our life have mental health issues.
I said many of them.
I think what you're saying is just derogatory and it's sensational.
Okay.
And that's the way you always do your journalism.
Do you believe in the policies, Brid? Do you think billions of people are going to die?
I didn't interrupt you, Niall.
I'm just asking you.
I didn't interrupt you. You can ask me when I finish my say. Extinction Rebellion's action... I didn't interrupt you either.
No.
Extinction Rebellion's action is a global action today. And the things that are being focused on about gluing breasts to ground, about holding up airplanes, miss the point. There was also a day of action for just transition. Board-and-Mona workers are being thrown under the bus by the government, and they are going to lose severely in the Midlands through job losses and community suffering as a result. They had a whole day on just transition. They had a whole day in opposition to the carbon tax going on the wrong cohort, that it shouldn't be on ordinary consumers, but rather on the fossil fuel and related industries. For example, on the aviation, no carbon tax on aviation. We put a proposal for that in the alternative budget, could have raised 900 million, not a scrap of it. But yet there are tax breaks executives to fly back and forth to China and to claim tax off their flights. So they were highlighting all of these issues. Another day was all about liquefied natural gas, translates to fracked gas from North America. We ban fracking in this country, but we import it in big. We are about to import it if they get their
my
LNG
question is this. I take all
so
your
their
points.
issues are really serious.
We had them on the show. We had them on the show. My question to you is this: from the point of view of the general public, Brid, some of whom were inconvenienced with flights and so on, particularly in London, traffic came to a standstill in the central line. Do you think that wins support or alienates people?
Well, look, I worked with a guy, Brendan Archibald, who's a well-known trade unionist. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. When he was a young man, he passionately spent most of his time fighting against apartheid. They occupied buildings, they blocked streets, they stopped rugby matches happening in the late 60s
and they were
and the early
vilified
70s.
as well.
And they were vilified at the time. Looking back, nobody now would condone apartheid in South Africa. In fact, they had to take this action in order to highlight the injustice. There were rebels in Dublin City doing worse things than holding up traffic and gluing themselves to gates in 1916. Now everybody eulogises them. Sometimes direct action of a very strong nature, and in this case it's very peaceful, needs to be taken to highlight the inaction of our...
No, I want to know, wait a second, you can wait a second. Ian, I want to bring you in, because what is the reaction in Britain to the protests, which have been a lot more people arrested in Britain, I think, than we've had here?
These protests are going on everywhere. I mean, on this one, I'm a 51-year-old millennial. We need to wake up. And not just smell the coffee, but kind of understand that there is a crisis going on. I mean, I work with business and investors. I tell you what's going on. They're not going to the streets, Brid. They're not super gluing themselves. But what they are doing
and mostly they're not in Dublin either, by the way.
But what they're doing is they're moving the money towards sustainable investment. If you look at what the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, biggest fund in the world. You look at what the Californian Teachers Pension Fund is doing. You look at what the Ontario Teachers Fund is doing. There's a mass wall of money that is moving from fossil towards sustainability. Now, I mean, I might argue that money talks in that sense, but there's a real underpinning of millennial investors who are actually starting to convince their parents about this issue too, but they're asking, where is my pension money being invested? Rather than protesting, they're actually moving the money, and I think that's what's going to move things faster.
The whole purpose of them, Martin, is to influence government TDs. Are you impressed?
I'm not impressed or not impressed. Either way, their main...
You're apathetic, are you?
No, their main tenet of their argument is that there is no action, and that's not the case. Government is really ambitious for climate action. We've laid that out again in this week's budget.
Unbelievable.
But we also
Sorry, Martin.
We also are very ambitious to bring people with us, and that's absolutely key. And in every argument like this, you will have extremes, and extremes on either side are not good. So when I'm on a panel like this as a government representative, I'm very conscious. I could find myself making two very different arguments on the same night against somebody who is an extreme climate change denier or against somebody who extremely believes we haven't gone far enough.
Who's the climate change denier?
Sorry, Martin.
No, I'm not saying
Martin, there's an extremely important point here. This budget this week was predicated on the basis of a no-deal Brexit, but also there was a lot about climate change being the major issue facing this generation. There was a 1.2 billion contingency fund put aside for dealing with a no-deal Brexit. The measures in relation to climate change were about a tenth of that. All the stuff about 6 billion will be raised in carbon taxes by 2030. Everything is put off aspirations into the future rather than doing real things that would make a difference now. Such as, for example, years ago when you had a financial emergency, a travel tax was introduced. There was a special levy put on the price of flights that people took. You could very easily have done that with aviation again in this budget and have ring-fenced the money for environmental needs, and you did nothing like that.
As a small open economy our tourism industry is under so much pressure, I don't think there's...
But you've done it before. I've given you the example of when you had the travel tax.
And we changed it as quick as we could. We had to raise that revenue
at the time. But there was an emergency, you raised money. There's an emergency now.
We are raising money now, and Brid talks about just transition, the board and motor workers, hundreds of whom live in Kildare and work in Kildare. We have a 31 million just transition fund for them that we'll see that is really ambitious for the Midlands, because we don't want to leave workers behind, we don't want to leave communities behind.
Now, be honest,
and
Martin.
there are huge opportunities in the green economy into the future, and we'll retrain those board and motor workers and support them to move into new areas where there will be new jobs.
6 million of that just transition fund is for the workers, for retraining them. Let me give you a figure.
20 million is for the investment in retrofitting social houses in the Midlands.
That 20 million, by the way, was announced a few weeks ago. It wasn't, and re-announced in the budget.
It's going to be funded by the increase in carbon pricing.
Let me finish the point. In northern Spain, when they decommissioned the coal mines, there was a budget of 250 million given to a similar size of a workforce right across Galicia and the Basque Country to give just transition to those workers. A lousy 6 million. And they don't even know if they're going to get redundancy deals before Christmas. And I can tell you this will blow up in the government's face because you're abandoning your own backyard and you're abandoning the Midlands in Ireland by treating the workers like this.
I disagree.
Brown Thomas and Penny's ladies' fashion in terms of fast fashion, that was a real focal point.
Yeah, because it is a real problem, and it's one of the things. I find it really funny the way this has all been framed. Everything around climate change has been tried to be framed in divisive politics that we have in other areas, in other social areas, when it really isn't. We've had the carbon tax since 2010 in some guise or other. It did get increased this budget in a way that people don't feel is equitable, but we have been paying it. So to put it into a bracket of you're for or against climate change changes is just frankly ridiculous. And I don't really know what Niall's point was about videos of people doing yoga, making out that obviously they don't know what they're talking about. These are
because public policy is being dictated by individuals who have no idea what they're talking about.
No, these are protesters. Protesters are always protesting
protesters
against
who have
things
no idea what they're talking about.
They are protesting
I've
against the status quo.
I've interviewed these protesters. They have no idea what they're talking about.
You know better than them, do you?
If I could actually say something.
I bet you didn't listen to them.
Niall.
Yeah, I'm listening.
If you look at what they're doing, people who are protesting are always protesting against the status quo. People who are doing very well will think that they are not sane, that you are happy with what is happening now. It's hard to change what we have to do. It's hard to not buy clothes every week. It's hard not to buy clothes every month.
I accept kids going out and protesting, for example, right?
It's hard not to,
can I say something?
Not to get a plastic bottle of water. It's hard to use your car.
But you're misunderstanding me completely.
All of these are difficult. That's why these people are handing us leaflets on the side of the street, because they are passionate about it.
If somebody wants to protest,
but I want them to protest.
Make your point.
If somebody wants to protest, and those kids went out there going back about 4 or 5 weeks ago and protested on the streets with their parents, that's wonderful. I don't necessarily agree with them. I don't think public policy should be dictated to by teenagers, particularly a Swedish one at that. But in saying that, some of the nonsense that they're coming out with is completely factually incorrect. And if we're going to guide people and guide public policy based on factors...
Have you read the latest UN climate change reports?
By the way,
have you read them?
The latest AO5 report, the UN Intergovernmental Report, there is nowhere in that states that there's going to be mass extinction. There is nowhere in that states that billions of people are going to die.
There is a huge amount of evidence in that. If we don't reduce our carbon emissions, we are heading for catastrophes.
Which they go on about all the time. And Greta made this point, that we're all going because natural disasters... Here's a graph. Natural disasters for the last 100 years. 1920, all right? This is the year 2019. These are natural disasters.
What's
this is the
source?
World Weather Centre, okay? These are the natural disasters. Where is the increase? There was 282 natural disasters, right? And that has dropped. If you go back to the early 1900s, okay, we lost 250,000 people to natural disasters. The average now is 20,000. It's dropped 95% in over 100 years. People are not dying in natural disasters. There's now the average amount of hurricanes, or what they call serious hurricanes per year, is 5. It used to be 7 in the last 100 years. What I'm trying to say to you is...
The last 5 years have been hotter than in any other time in the last 3 minutes.
I'm not denying that. I'm not denying it.
OK. No, sorry. No, we actually need to take a break. Because we've more to come back with about this. And in fact...
That's because I had facts you don't.
No, that's not because you have facts.
Because the facts are being denied.
Sorry, you're being sensational.
I'm not being sensational. I'm giving you facts, but you just don't want to